Brest Fortress was built in the mid-19th century on the western border of the Russian Empire. The new weapon made the defensive quality of the fort decrease but not the person protecting it. About 20 years after the Second World War, Sergei Smirnov wrote a book that revealed the truth of the war about the defenders of the fortress. Hi everyone, welcome to the IQ Movie channel, and in this video we will discuss a film called The Brest Fortress in 2010. 70 years ago, Brest Fortress, or also known as Brest Litovsk Fort, was one of the defenses of the Soviet Union in the war against fascism. At that time in June 1941, the Soviet Union troops fought so heroically against the Nazi German army. This film tells the story of the brutal Nazi German invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941 for 8 days in the Brest Fort area during World War II. This war made the Soviet Union destroyed, and 8,000 troops who were in the fortress of Brest died without a trace. And before we move on to the storyline of the film, please subscribe to this channel first to always get updates on other interesting film storylines from this channel. On June 21, 1941, in the city park of Brest, the atmosphere was so lively, the residents of the fort seemed to be having fun while dancing. There was seen a small child named Akimov Alexander, or commonly called Sasha. He was a member of the music platoon of the 333rd Regiment. He played a musical instrument to entertain people in the city park. Sasha only lives with an older brother named Andrei Akimov, because their parents had died in Spain during the war in 1937. Not long after, there was a girl that Sasha liked. The girl's name is Anya. They both look at each other and like each other. Anya is the daughter of a lieutenant named Andrei Kizhevatov. Not long after, Sasha returned to Brest Fort, which was his headquarters and home. The fort was very large and spacious. The residents of the fort were mostly Soviet Union soldiers and their families who were assigned there. While on the other side at the train station, the residents began to panic and wanted to leave the fort, due to rumors that the German Nazi troops would attack the Brest Fort. There a commissioner named Efim Fomin was seen talking to the head of the train station. He asked to be given a ticket to go pick up his wife and children. But unfortunately the train tickets had run out and he could not go to pick up his family. Therefore the Fomin commissioner could only write a letter to his wife. Then he went to meet his troops in the fort. On the other side of the fort, a major named Pyotr Gavrilov was seen talking to Lieutenant Weinstein about the issue of the attack on Nazi Germany, which made many people panic. The experienced Major Pyotr said it was very likely that Nazi Germany would attack them in the near future. He asks everyone to be alert and ready, because if they are attacked then they will be trapped and cannot get out of the fort. Moreover, the soldiers in the fort numbered around 8,000 people, including the wives and children of the soldiers, who would be difficult to evacuate. But Lieutenant Weinstein did not seem to believe the issue. It made Major Pyotr annoyed because no one believed his words. After a long time of explaining and being ignored, finally Major Pyotr with a very angry feeling left Lieutenant Weinstein. In the evening the train belonging to Nazi Germany turned out to have arrived at the station in the city of Brest. Thousands of Nazi German soldiers also came down, complete with Soviet Union army clothes. Of course this way they did as a disguise in launching their strategy. Then that night they turned off the electricity and water in the fort as a first step. June 22, 1941 at 3:58 p.m. when everyone in the Brest Fortress was fast asleep. Suddenly they were surprised by the attack of the Nazi German soldiers raining down on them. All the occupants of the fort ran away to save themselves. The sudden attack was very powerful. It certainly made them very panicked and frightened. Chaos is everywhere. One by one the buildings were destroyed by the German attacks. Elsewhere, Sasha, who was with Anya in a lake, ran in panic at the sudden attack. Fear and panic completely swept over everyone in the Brest Fort. It was a day that no one expected. No one thought that Nazi Germany would attack so quickly and so horribly. Exactly 6:30 a.m. after launching the air attack, Now the German troops began to move into the fortress of Brest. They attacked and killed everyone who was there, including the hospital. Terrified soldiers and civilians tried to get out of the fort through the north gate. But their efforts were in vain. It turned out that there were already German soldiers who were blocking them, complete with machine guns. All of them who dared to leave were immediately bombarded with gunfire without any of them being left alive. At the east gate was Major Pyotr trying to intercept the soldiers trying to get out of the fort. He tried to calm them all down so they wouldn't panic and stay in a position to defend the fort. He also fired a warning shot. Then he gave the order to take weapons and make a defensive position inside the fort so that the soldiers would not run away. At the Homsky Gate, Commissar Fomin led the troops who were there to spy on the enemy from the window. He ordered his troops not to let the German soldiers over the bridge in front of the fort. He also ordered one of the soldiers to try to contact headquarters and ask for help. The German soldiers continued along the fort. Lieutenant André, who was at the border post, who saw it, immediately ordered his troops to attack the German soldiers with makeshift weapons, because all their weapons had been buried under the rubble of the building. After a fierce battle, Lieutenant André and his troops finally succeeded in repelling the German soldiers. The Soviet Union soldiers at that time were already divided into groups in several places. The first group is at the Homsky Gate under the leadership of Commissioner Fomin. Group 2 is at the East Gate under Major Peter's command. Group 3 is at the border post under the command of Lieutenant André, and Group 4 is holding out in the barracks with Lieutenant Weinstein. At that time an undercover German soldier entered the army of Lieutenant Weinstein. He requested that his troops be split into small groups and leave the fort. However, the disguise of the German army did not go smoothly because it was discovered by the different shoe designs. The design of the Soviet Union army boots had round spikes, while the German army boots had square spikes. In the end, the German soldier was killed. At the Homsky Gate, Commissar Fomin suddenly saw the German soldiers who were carrying the civilian hostage towards the bridge. He then ordered his troops to be ready to aim around the window right in the chest, while he and one of his troops would meet the Germans. While negotiating, the Fomin commissar suddenly ordered the hostages to lie down, and as soon as his troops were ready around the window, they shot the German soldiers. In the end, the German troops were defeated by the Soviet Union troops. The civilians who were taken as hostages also survived. The Fomin commissar then ordered one of the soldiers to go to the city and ask for help as soon as possible. The soldier immediately rushed towards the city. But when going out through the north gate, he was surprised by the piles of corpses of Soviet soldiers and civilians that filled the gate. He finally decided to return to the Homsky Gate. Not long after that, from the gate entered the German military tank, crushing all the corpses there. Long story short, the soldiers arrived at the Homsky Gate and immediately reported to the Fomin commissioner that the north gate could no longer be passed. At the east gate, the German soldiers deployed tanks and were about to attack the Soviet Union troops. Major Pyotr, who saw that, immediately mobilized his troops to prepare with improvised weapons. The German soldiers were getting closer to them. When the Soviet Union was almost pressed, suddenly the cannon hit the German troops. It turns out that on the right side there is a group of Soviet Union soldiers who suddenly help complete with anti-tank weapons, and one of the soldiers is known to be Andrei Akimov, who is Sasha's brother. But not long after that, one of the German tanks found out the position of Andrei and the others. The tank immediately responded to Andrei's attack until Andrei died instantly. It didn't take long before Major Pyotr and his troops rushed forward and attacked the German soldiers and the remaining tanks. With extraordinary enthusiasm and courage, the Soviet Union soldiers finally managed to finish off the German army. On June 23, 1941, the German soldiers gave an announcement for the residents who were in the fort to surrender and would be pardoned. There, Sasha, who was still alive, didn't believe the German's words. He ran towards the troops of Lieutenant Andrei in the building. Sasha, who knows that Lieutenant Andrei is Anya's father, then asks where Anya is. Lieutenant Andrei, who didn't know Anya's whereabouts, couldn't help but be silent. Finally Sasha went and said that he would look for Anya until he could. While looking for Anya in a building, Sasha accidentally met a group of Commissar Fomin who was interrogating a German soldier. The German soldier said that the city of Minsk, which was the main defense center of the Soviet Union, had been destroyed. But the Fomin Commissar did not believe the Soviet Union would lose so easily. At that time also seen Soviet planes passing around the fort. The Commissar of Fomin and his troops who saw that seemed happy because it meant that soon help from headquarters would be coming soon. However, the plane was shot down by the German Air Force. But fortunately the pilot managed to survive by landing using a parachute. The Fomin commissioner then asked the pilot the situation at headquarters and why no help had arrived. The pilot replied that the Soviet Union had been destroyed, there were no more bases left and all the cities had been occupied by Nazi Germany and the troops there were forced to withdraw from Minsk. The commissioner of Fomin and his troops who heard this immediately lost their enthusiasm and hope. Now they have to face the fact that they have to fight tooth and nail against the invading German army without any help from headquarters. On June 24, 1941, their dwindling supplies of food and water added to their suffering and hardship. The Fomin Commissar devised a plan to break out of the fort despite having to face a very large and very strong German army. He asked for his plan to be written down and then passed on to another group. The goal was for other groups to join in and break out together against the German soldiers. At that time the German troops again attacked them. The Fomin Commissar quickly ordered 2 of his troops to pass the message to another group. Sasha, who heard this, immediately asked the Fomin commissioner to join in delivering the message. But the commissioner of Fomin certainly will not allow it. However, Sasha, who has a very high spirit of nationalism, ended up participating in secret. In the middle of the journey the German Nazis again rained the Brest Fort with barrage of air attacks. The attack leaves the troops sending messages seriously injured and only Sasha survives the explosion. Now Sasha is trusted to deliver the message alone. In the middle of the journey, Sasha accidentally met Anya in a weak state. He asked Anya to endure and promised to pick her back up after he delivered the message. Until finally Sasha managed to convey the message to all groups. On June 25, 1941 at 2 p.m., after receiving a message from the Commissar of Fomin, all the troops of the Soviet Union were prepared in their respective places. The flare gun as a signal to attack was finally fired. And all the soldiers of the Soviet Union immediately moved forward. They attacked through 3 sides, namely the east side, the Homsky Gate side, and the border post. Finally a major battle ensued and killed many Soviet Union troops until they were forced to withdraw. The next day at Brest Fort, it was seen that the entire fort was filled with corpses. They tried various ways but to no avail. At the border post, the last Lieutenant Andrei ordered civilians consisting of mothers and children to immediately leave the Brest Fort, including his wife and child. With feelings that are so sad, Lieutenant Andrei ordered his wife and child to immediately leave the fort and surrender to the Germans in the hope of being forgiven. They only had 12 minutes to get out of the fort. The civilians left the citadel led by Lieutenant Andrei's wife with a white cloth. At the same time Sasha finally managed to find Anya. Lieutenant Andrei, who saw his son who was still alive, immediately ran over to him and hugged him. He immediately asked Anya and Sasha to join the group of civilians who were about to leave the fort. On June 26, 1941 at 4 p.m. After all the civilians made it out of the Brest Fort, German soldiers finally dropped a bomb weighing 2 tons on the fort. After that, the German soldiers came along every corner of the fort. They killed all the Soviet Union soldiers who were still surviving in the building with bursts of fire. Commissar Fomin, who is known to be a war commissar of the Soviet Union's Red Army. He was executed by the German Army firing squad right in front of the Homsky Gate. In 1957 he was awarded the title of Order of Lenin posthumously, while Major Pyotr was made a prisoner of war and a victim of Stalin's repression. He was awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union in 1957. Lieutenant Andrei died in his last battle trying to distract the German soldiers. He was also awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. Now all the surviving Soviet troops have died without a trace. And finally Brest Fortress had to fall into the hands of Nazi Germany. At the end of the film decades later, an old man who turned out to be Sasha was seen paying his respects at the Brest Fort Memorial. He was accompanied by his grandson who was the same age as Sasha when the battle took place. Old Sasha looks very sad to see his past, which is so dark and terrible. And that's the ending of the 2010 film The Brest Forts this time. Hopefully this film provides historical insight for all of you who watch. This film is a war film of the Belarusian Soviet Union during the Second World War, which is told from the point of view of 15-year-old Sasha Akimov. Later this story was adapted to the big screen by director Alexander Kot and produced by the Belarusian Russian Television Radio Association. Thank you for watching to the end. Don't forget to subscribe and see you in the next video.